most anticipated cinematic event of the year, the Oscars. This is the first year that I've actually gotten around to watching each Best Picture nominee, most of which I saw in theaters while I bought the other ones. I enjoyed each of the movies quite a bit, and I found it fairly difficult to rank them, especially compared to last year when Everything Everywhere All at Once was, in my opinion, leagues above the rest of the nominees. In this video, I'm going to give my review and thoughts on each nominee in the order that I enjoyed them. This isn't necessarily my predictions of who will win, just a ranking of my overall perceptions of these films. Maestro, 6.7. Maestro has been criticized for a few things during its circuit, and I don't think that those criticisms are necessarily unjustified. One of these critiques is that the film is Oscar bait, and this is certainly true. The Hollywood Reporter is quoted as saying, "We have not had a master, a director of great auteur works for years, who are not afraid to be popular and elegant at the same time." And The Telegraph says that films don't take risks anymore. This is a bunch of baloney. There are many films just within the other nominees that fit both of these descriptions, and Maestro does not. There are practically no risks taken, and most aspects of the film are overacted or overproduced to seem kind of artsy or high class. It has a runtime of just over 2 hours, but if you cut out all the fluff, you could likely cut this down to a normal time of 90 minutes. I don't think it's all bad though. Bradley Cooper really shined in some scenes, and Carey Mulligan is phenomenal throughout the whole film. Particularly the recreation of Leonard Bernstein conducting Mahler's Second in LA Cathedral is a particular standout for me, as it was for a bunch of people. I think every aspect of this 6-minute performance is perfect. I just wish the rest of the film made me feel the same way. I also enjoyed the aspects of Bernstein's life that they chose to portray or didn't choose to portray. I was able to clearly understand how Bernstein's sexuality caused a conflict with him and his wife, and how that conflict affected their relationship without ever being explicitly shown intimate details of Bernstein's affairs. On the contrary though, I never really felt fully connected with Cooper as Bernstein, and instead I kind of felt as if I was watching the scenes through Felicia's eyes, his wife. There is a clear passion that Cooper put into this film and Bernstein's story, but his chase for an Oscar kind of got in the way of making it the masterpiece that it was supposed to be. The Holdovers, 6.7. The Holdovers is a journey of self-discovery for both a student and a teacher stuck together in a boarding school over winter break. I found this film very enjoyable. Actually, it is a satisfying and emotional ride. The backbone of the story has sort of cliche elements, but I do think that it takes those in an interesting direction. Paul Giamatti gives a very convincing performance, and Divine Joy Randolph is extraordinary, and she's also nominated for Best Supporting Actress this year. Her character's conflict is the B story that really helps to fill in the gaps where the plot kind of gets sort of slow, and in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if she walked home with the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. And although very simple, I found the cinematography and set design to be sort of beautiful. I don't find this to be a film that is needed to see in a theater though. It's not a spectacle like the rest of these. It feels kind of more like a family home theater movie, if that makes sense. I did find many moments where the pacing was a little off or scenes felt dragged out to fit a runtime, but overall I felt this film was a pretty good middle-of-the-pack movie. Past Lives, 7.1. Past Lives is another film that I don't really have much to say about. It's slow paced, but I didn't ever find myself bored or waiting around for something else to happen. It's an interesting take on the cliche of two estranged lovers with a realistic spin on how they both were split and how they both came back together. The element of migration is not something that natural born Americans are too privy to, and this film kind of provides an interesting perspective to that audience. Following their timeline linearly helps to understand these characters' motivations and intentions and why their feelings are so strong for each other, whereas doing sort of flashbacks to those scenes I think would have cut away from the film. Also, the dialogue is very realistic. It's one of the things that really stood out for this movie for me. I've had sort of conversations that go similarly to the dialogue of the film, and you can tell that the writer has also had those conversations, and that real life experience, it translates into the screenplay. This dialogue does still manage to fit in memorable ideas such as the central past lives theme or author's doubts in Nora. This is a story that, although specific to these characters, is relatable to many people in some way, and I think the ending helps to not categorize it as some romantic fantasy like many similar films seem to follow. The Zone of Interest, 7.3. The most uncomfortable I was during the viewing of these movies was during The Zone of Interest. This film manages to be so emotional and so powerful without ever being graphic. Sandra Hüller is the shining star throughout the whole film. The dichotomy of her loving motherly tendencies placed on top of the horrors of her husband provides for an eerie discussion to be had. I found the scenes of the Polish woman unnecessary, and honestly they kind of took me out of the immersion. The rest of the film kind of follows a similar look and a similar feel, and when it cut to those scenes, it didn't really resonate with me. I didn't think they added anything to the film. It was really an interesting idea to never directly show the horrors of 1940s Germany and instead put the relationship of Rudolf Höss and his work in the forefront. I'm not surprised at all to see that it's also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. This is one of the most impactful films of the list, and the ending of it makes you leave the theater very uncomfortable. Poor Things, 7.8. Poor Things was conflicting for me. I enjoyed the general story, and it was definitely a faithful adaptation of the book. The film is also visually stunning. The unique choice of set design and wide-angle lenses fully immerses you in this new world that Bella is thrust into. As the film progresses, the cinematography slightly changes in order to reflect how Bella is maturing and changing in her own right. This film is nominated for cinematography, costume design, film editing, makeup and hairstyling, and production design, on top of the slew of other nominations. All of these are definitely deserved. The production and costumes alongside the cinematography create this fantastical world that is beautiful to see. My biggest problem lies with the general controversy surrounding it, the sexuality. Bella's sexual nature is part of her character, and her being constantly sexualized by men is a core theme of the story. Unfortunately, showing the sex adds absolutely nothing to the film, and the implication of her actions would do just fine, specifically when Bella is a prostitute. Given the nature of her job and the former shots of a man choosing her, one can easily guess what happens next. I don't think that these scenes ruin the film by any means. I still think that it's great, but they definitely made me feel uncomfortable past the point of where this film was supposed to be. Each performance is fantastic, and Emma Stone alongside Rami Youssef are true standouts. American Fiction, 7.8. This film was one of the best black comedies I have seen in a while, and it is running under the radar in my opinion. The central themes of the film evolve a conversation that we have been having for decades. I think that it gives a very important perspective, and I think this film should have been more important to people. Everybody, especially Jeffrey Wright and Sterling K. Brown, give great performances. The film manages to stay humorous without making any direct jokes and switches seamlessly throughout the more serious topics and the humorous events. My problems arise with the ending. When the film concludes with what the audience thinks is the ending, I was left satisfied and felt no need for any more. I didn't necessarily dislike how the film actually concluded, but I did find it slightly shoehorned in, and it didn't exactly hit its mark that it was trying to go for. Although I couldn't relate to the characters in the film very much, I always found myself invested in each of their stories and their relationships with each other, and I was convinced by Monk throughout the whole film. Barbie. 8.8. As you could have guessed, Barbie was one of the best movies of the year. I was thoroughly entertained throughout the whole film, starting from the moment it opened with the 2001 reference to after the credits rolled. The choice by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, who wrote the film, to turn a kids' movie about a toy doll into a progressive and impactful message about female empowerment was clever in my opinion. This film manages to toe the line between a comedic and childish story and a powerful message very well. The plot progresses efficiently and appropriately, even with the slightly longer runtime, although the beginning is a little slow. This is another nominee that had great costume and set design. The set for Barbie Land is intentionally unrealistic and adds to the humor and sense of a whole new world. Margot Robbie is fantastic as Barbie, and I'm not sure that anyone else could have done any better, frankly. I thought Ryan Gosling was fine as Ken, but he wasn't really anything special for me. The score of the movie is also great, of course with emphasis on the original What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish. This film resonated with me and spread a conversation so effectively. It was a beautiful film. Killers of the Flower Moon. 8.9. This film was stunning. The appreciation for the Osage people bleeds through the screen in a way that I haven't seen before. It also beautifully tells the story of Molly Burkhart and the terrorization of her family faithfully. Unfortunately, the pacing of this film is slow and quite off at times, which can ruin the immersion in the plot. I also didn't see DiCaprio and De Niro shine as much as I thought they would. The real star of this film was not the acting nor the writing, although Lily Gladstone was really good, but instead the cinematography. Through the negative elements of this film, Scorsese does shine through, and the conclusion shows his dedication to the story and leaves the viewer very emotional. These last few films were very hard for me to rank because genuinely they are all very well done, but overall fantastic film. Unfortunately, it just falls short in some areas. Anatomy of a Fall. 9.1. Anatomy of a Fall has the best acting I have seen in any one of these films. Not once did I feel taken aback by a performance. Even the dog gave me a performance that I couldn't believe was fake, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I still have no idea how you could train a dog to do the things that that dog did. This film focuses less on the whodunit aspect and more so on the why related to the father's death, which I enjoyed. As the film unravels, you learn more and more about the relationship between these people, and there were no elements to really distract from that. A great margin of this film focuses on the trial surrounding the death, and I genuinely felt as if I was watching a sort of documentary. It is filmed in a style reminiscent of Succession, where characters are performing even when not the focus of the shot or off camera. This provides for a hyper-realistic feel. I thought the pacing and length was appropriate, but there were a few moments where I found myself a little bored, although that was unoften. Overall, this is a film I would highly recommend to anyone. Oppenheimer. 9.6. I want to start this with my negatives of the film. The scene of the Trinity test was very underwhelming for me. I think I speak for most of us when I say that I was anticipating the scene more than anything else in the movie. When it arrived, I was more than excited, but that excitement was never realized. The build-up to the test was beautifully done, but the explosion itself was nowhere near large enough to be believable as the largest bomb ever created by man. And the sonic boom it creates is no louder than some of the music that plays throughout the film. Nolan creates spectacular films meant for the theater. This inherently comes with his films being very loud, so when on top of that you are expecting something to be loud and it isn't, it's very disappointing. However, outside of this, the film was a fantastic experience. There are a few nitpicky things, such as some shoddy dialogue and too many names floating around, but it really isn't that distracting. One aspect that was slightly distracting was the amount of cameos in this film. I know Nolan is very specific about casting, but many of these cameos could easily be replaced by any actor. This film was a great ride, and the screenplay is ingenious. Cillian Murphy and specifically RDJ give credible performances. This film doesn't miss a beat and keeps you hooked throughout the entire 3-hour runtime. Easily the best biopic I've seen and my favorite film of the year by far. The catalog of films this year was much better than last year in my opinion, and I think we can easily say that we are out of the funk that the film industry was in through the last few years due to the pandemic. I thoroughly enjoyed each film, and I'm excited to see who wins tonight. From the breathtaking visuals to the mesmerizing performances, the silver screen has been a stage where dreams, dilemmas, and destinies unfold with profound resonance. In the grand tapestry of cinema, these nominees stand as a testament to the power of storytelling to connect us, challenge us, and provoke introspection. Whether it's the riveting narratives, the spellbinding cinematography, or the haunting melodies of these films, each element converges to create a symphony that echoes long after the credits roll. Thank you.